Chairperson, I think all the evidence that has to be given by President Mbeki should be given in this commission. He's here to give evidence. If there are any questions arising, those questions should be put. He shouldn't be asked to go and do some bedtime reading and then come to some conclusions and then write a letter to the commission or whatever. I think his evidence should be heard by everybody who is here, based on proper questions which have to be asked, and no homework. This is not a primary school.
Yeah, I'm not going to allow Mr. Hoffman you to give Mr. Mbeki any homework that he must go and do at home, and from there send us letters. We want everything to be done in public. If at all you want to ask him questions relating to that, he is here. Let's do it in public.
You're inviting me to continue.
If you haven't finished, you still want to continue, you can continue. I don't want allegations later on that I stop you from cross-examining. If you think you haven't finished, you can continue.
Bear with me, because I rather thought it was a generous offer, but I see that my generosity is being spurned by Mr. Farhan. I accept that this sort of thing should happen, but the sorts of questions that one can ask in relation to what goes on is, look, I've already covered the JIT report. And I don't think we need to go into that in more detail. It is covered in this book for the information of the Commission. It is covered in this book in some detail. And Mr. Mbeki has given his explanation, and as his cross-examiner, I am stuck with his explanation on the JIT aspect. So that leaves me, if you'll just bear with me, there are just a couple of items here that I've marked, and I want to make sure that they, that's still part of that.
Yes, Mr. Advocate Moran.
Chairperson, while a learned colleague is still paging through, trying to think up questions, I hope those questions will really firstly be instructions that he has received from his client, and not mere allegations which appear in a book.
Mr. Moran, I think I'm going to allow Advocate Hoffman to do what he thinks he needs to do. He is going through a particular book. I'm going to give him an opportunity to finish going through that book.
Thank you, Chairperson.
I'm indebted to you, Mr. Commissioner. Yes, but that's not his book. It's It's very tricky to get involved in this detail here. I don't want to go into the detail, because we'll be here all night.
Mr. Hoffman, how long do you think you still have to go through that book for you to formulate questions that are going to put to Mr. Mbeki?
I'm in the process of cutting out the bits that I don't want to cover unnecessarily. If you bear with me for 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Good.
I'm sure that I will either have a question or I will shut up.
Okay. I hope you find a question in 2 minutes. We'll wait for 2 minutes in the meantime.
to say it's irrelevant, you see. Mr. Mbeki, I want to give you the opportunity, because I think you deserve to have it, of dealing with allegations mainly from your successor, your current successor as president, that you have abused the system in South Africa in relation to the arms deals and other things as well, but in particular to the arms deals, by way of creating political agendas in matters which ought to be matters of criminal investigation. I know that when you were asked repeatedly to appoint a commission of inquiry into the arms deals by various people ranging from Cosatu to Archbishop Tutu and others, your attitude was always consistently, if you have evidence, find a policeman and lay a complaint. Now, the complaint against you is that you have used the system in order to further a political agenda rather than to be involved in the proper administration of criminal justice. And I think because there is so much of that out there, I think it's only fair that I give you the opportunity of responding in this forum to that type of allegation.
Okay, Marani. This, to my mind, doesn't relate to our terms of reference. And if the former Deputy President doesn't want to answer that question, he can say so. It has got nothing to do with our terms of reference.
Chairperson, I do not know from whom these allegations emanate, the complaints, by whom. It's not very clear to me. It's just all in the air without being specific. I do not know who the complainant is. I don't know whether it is my learned friend's client, Mr. Terry Crawford Brown, or somebody else. I really don't.
Maybe let me do that. Before I make a final ruling, are you in a position to comment to what Advocate Moran has said now?
Yeah. No, I'm trying to get to the bottom, because the arms deal is intimately involved in what has happened in the unfolding of the political situation in this country. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of that in relation to the allegations that are made on oath by then private citizen Jacob Zuma, now President Zuma, in the Nicholson judgment that the commissioners are aware of, in the Harams judgment that followed it, all of which were aimed at suggesting that this witness is a person who manipulates the rule of law for his own political agenda, and we submit that it is relevant to who has benefited and who hasn't benefited out of what has gone on in relation to the arms deals, given that somebody has been given 15 years in jail for organizing a 500,000 rand.
Okay, besides that long speech that we've made, are you in a position to answer Advocate Marani's query?
Asking me whether?
That's right.
Yes,
Advocate
his
Marani
question
says
is,
that
who am I talking about? I'm talking about Jacob Zuma, President Jacob Zuma. That
okay.
is the person who is making the allegations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Chairperson, that's not correct. President Jacob Zuma never said President Mbeki manipulated situations. In any event, if my learned friend is referring to the Nicholson judgment, we know the history of that judgment, Judge Nicholson's judgment. That judgment was set aside by the SCA. I do not know why it is being brought up here.
It's been brought up here because it has to do with what went on around the arms deals. It doesn't matter that the Nicholson judgment was overruled. What matters is that this witness lost the highest office in the land because of what was said in the Nicholson judgment. And the Nicholson judgment said things about this witness in relation to his attitude towards malfeasance and misfeasance, not only around the arms deals, but in other respects. And I believe, in fairness to this witness, no matter whom we owe our fealty to now, it is only fair at this hour of the day to make that my last question.
Thank you. I'm not going to allow the question. Advocate Moran is there. I'm sure if at all that question was to the benefit of his client, he would have said so. I'm not going to allow the question. Unless if at all former Deputy President former President wants to respond to that. Because that question has got nothing to do with our terms of reference.
Yes, Nida, I accept your observation, Chairperson, that it's got nothing to do with your terms of reference. But there's a point that I made earlier and Advocate Marane made again later, which was that, as you know, Chairperson, the work of your commission is being shown to the country, is being televised. And I did say that I did hope that some of the manner in which we've conducted ourselves here has not been in order to address not the commission, but that public that is out there. And so it might therefore in that context be necessary for me to say something very, very briefly about this. And first thing, to confirm what Advocate Moran has said here, President Zuma has never ever said any of these things that it is alleged he said. That I did this and that and the other. He's never done that. Secondly, the advocate says that the decision of the Supreme Court of Appeal with regard to the Nicholson judgment is irrelevant. It isn't. Exactly because the Supreme Court of Appeal dealt with exactly the same thing. Dealt exactly with the same thing that is raising. Because these are the matters that were presented to that court. And the Supreme Court of Appeal took a decision about that and set aside what Nicholson judgment had said. It's very relevant to what he said. Because that was a matter that was being adjudicated. Now, lastly, the chairperson, the advocate, is just referred to. That's why the witness lost his job for the following reasons. I don't know. He might have got this necessary briefing from the National Executive Committee of the ANC, which entitles him to come to a decision of that kind. Or indeed, he may very well be basing himself on statements that were made immediately after that decision of the National Executive Committee of the ANC by the Secretary General and Deputy Secretary General of the ANC. I would recommend, Chairperson, that if he wants to pursue this particular matter, he should go back to those two sources, which will explain to him what decision was taken and why. Now, lastly, with regard to he mentioned that one of the things were done with turned down the request to appoint a judicial commission of inquiry as part of this process of mishandling whatever. The evidence leader here this morning, Chairperson, you will recall that he spoke about a document which had inadvertently been circulated, which was responses that I had made in 2008 to various parliamentary questions, in fact, 2 parliamentary questions. One of them, Indy explained that it had been inadvertently distributed and really was not part of the record, and indeed, Chairperson, you responded to that. But that one of these questions was about the setting up of this commission. I don't want to reread what I said in Parliament, but at the center of my argument, Chairperson, about this matter, was there had been a very thorough investigation by state organs here, in which the government had full confidence. In other jurisdictions, there had been investigations, like in Germany. Germans had been in contact with us and asked for legal assistance and this and that and the other. And in the end, they dropped prosecutions against members of the German frigate consortium. I don't know where this British inquiry ended up of the Serious Fraud Office, which related to the matters that the advocate mentioned about what BAE systems might have done. But I'm saying, in the end, there's this huge volume of work that's been done about this, enormous number of documents. And I'm talking about, Chairperson, I must be very clear about this, I'm talking about decisions taken by the Interministerial Committee and decisions taken by Cabinet. And I kept saying, and I repeated this in Parliament, that if anybody has got evidence, despite all of this investigation that's taken place, if anybody has got any new evidence which suggests that we should do this, by all means we will set up a judicial commission. But where is this evidence? To this day, Chairperson, I'm saying to this day, allegations plenty, many, you can fill up books and books with allegations. But for 16 years, why has nobody produced one single fact? And that was my argument. That indeed, if somebody could say this 1 year to 1 or 2 facts or 2.5, to justify this, when various state organs have done as much work as they've already done, then indeed, if there was additional information, we would give it. It had nothing to do with mismanaging or mishandling anything. And indeed, Chairperson, what I said in 2008 to end about this was perfectly correct. And I'm saying to this day, and unless I'm not properly informed, yes, I'm aware of the many allegations, which an allegation is very easy to make. But I'm not aware of one single fact that's been produced by anybody to say the Interministerial Committee took any decision in a corrupt manner, that the Cabinet took any decision in a corrupt manner. I'm not aware of this. That in the process, of determining, for instance, the preferred bidders, that decision was influenced by corrupt interventions. Allegations might have very well have been made, but I'm saying on the basis of the facts, given the enormous amount of investigation that's taken place, I kept saying, please produce something which would justify the appointment of a judicial commission of inquiry. That's the entire reason. That was the entire argument. I don't know about this other argument that's been presented, that this was part of some scheme to politicize what should have been ordinary governance things and so on. That's why I'm explaining this, Chairperson. I'm terribly sorry to be so long. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, do you still have any questions?
Yes, there are a couple of matters that arise from the full explanation that Mr. Mbeki has given us that I feel I need to share with him, because obviously he has big responsibilities in the whole of Africa and doesn't involve himself with the minutiae of what goes on in the arms deal in South Africa.
But my question is, do you have any question?
I have a question for him.
Okay.
Are you aware that in relation to Ferrostal, who supplied us with the submarines, there is a report which they have released from a privilege. It's a report by a firm of attorneys called Debois Plimpton, LLP, dated the 13th of April 2011, in which it is admitted that there was bribery in the South African submarine deals. You don't know about that report?
No, I'm not aware of that report at all, Chairperson. And so I don't know what it says. I don't know who was bribed. But the point I'm making, which may be wrong, in terms of what has just been said, is that I had no information that members of the IMC, members of cabinet, took any decision corruptly.
Are you aware that in that report, the name of Tony Georgiadis features as a major donor to the ANC?
Mr. Hoffman, I'm not going to allow the question. The witness said that he's not aware of that report. If he's not aware of the report, how can he be aware of the contents of the report?
I thought he might have known about that fact as quite apart from the report. Perhaps I should put the question better.
Rephrase the question. Apart from the report, then you can put that question to you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. It's getting late. Tony Georgiadis, donor to the ANC, yes or no? Or I don't know.
Sure, he did. But whether he was a major donor or not, which was your original question, that I don't know. But certainly I'm sure he donated something to the ANC.
John Breitenbach. Same question.
I don't know who that is.
Richard Charter.
Don't know whether he donated anything to the ANC.
How should we go to
Mr. Hoffman, if you've told that your names are through, then maybe let it be so. I see you're trying to get some further names from your client.
Farnish Longwani. No, we were trying to decide which order to do it in. We're trying to be fair to everybody. Farnish Longwani, is he a donor to the ANC?
I don't know.
Then, are you aware of the fact that BAE has paid massive fines for its illegal activity in the arms trade, and that the South African deal is part of what they have paid in fines for $479 million in fines for being bad boys in relation to supplying arms to inter alia South Africa?
Just hold on. Are you saying that BAE was convicted because of their South African transactions?
That the South African transactions are included in the plea bargain is what I'm instructed by Mr. Crawford Brown. Yes.
Do you have evidence to prove that?
I'm sure that it can be obtained.
I think let the witness answer, and if you can help me, we're going to ask you to give us that information because we've been running around trying to get that information. We're unable to get it. You seem to be in a much better position because your client can get that information. We'll really appreciate it. Information which shows that BAE paid a fine, and one of the charges was their activities in South Africa.
It was a plea bargain fine, and
in
South
that
Africa
plea
was part
bargain
of it.
fine, that one of the activities that were included was their South African activities. We'll really appreciate it if you can give us. And I hope that your client, when it comes to testify next time, will help us with that information.
I love it when a plan comes together, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Mr. Mbeki can answer the question. Are you aware that BAE paid a fine, and do you know why they paid that fine?
No, Chairperson, I was not. Indeed, I was going to say myself that surely that information should be given to the Commission.
And then to get to the most painful part, it's quite ironic because I'm not aware myself. I don't know if some of these more learned people behind me are. I'm not aware myself of any corruption in the Italian part of the deal, which is quite funny because of Italy's reputation. But in relation to the French part of the deal, I see I even got Mr. Marani to smile then. In relation to the French part of the deal, Barbara Masekela has said that you came to Paris to talk to the and when you were asked about it previously, you couldn't remember that meeting. Has your memory been jogged in the meantime, or are you still without a memory as to what you were talking about in Paris with Barbara Masekela and others?
Chairperson, let me again mention the document that the evidence leader mentioned earlier. The second second question to which I responded, which is in that document, relates to this particular matter. And in that response, what I said was, Ambassador Masekela does not know. Yes, indeed, she arranged a meeting, but she was not there, does not know whether the meeting took place. Minister Issou Pahad, who was with me in Paris, also doesn't recall such a meeting taking place. We asked the French government through the French embassy as to their recollection about this, and they can't recall such a meeting either, which I couldn't either. Now, we didn't, the advocate says that we went to Paris to talk to the arms dealers. We didn't. The reason we went to France was a state visit. It was a state visit, and the reason we could go back to the French government to ask for their own recollection of this meeting is because I was a guest of the President of France, and therefore all the meetings that would have had in France would have had to be arranged together with the government of France. And I'm saying they said that they had no idea whether such a meeting took place. So none of us can recall this meeting taking place. Barbara Masekela can recall arranging it, but she does not know whether it took place because she wasn't there. She didn't participate in it. So that is the answer to this.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
A very good evening. We break away from the live broadcast of the Arms Procurement Commission in Pretoria for Business Review. Welcome to you. We'll be speaking to the Finance Minister, Nhlanhla Nene, who has just returned from the BRICS Summit in Brazil. Also in the show tonight, interest rates going up. The Reserve Bank Governor Jill Marcus has called for better labour relations in South Africa. She's warned that the recent wave of strikes could lead to inflation and mean that even less people have jobs in this country. But she's also taken aim at the bonuses of execs. First, let's start with a look at the general news headlines of the day. A Malaysian passenger airliner with 295 people on board has crashed in Ukraine near the Russian border. The Boeing was en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. Details remain sketchy, but Russia's Interfax news agency says the plane was brought down by a ground-to-air missile. Ruthless cross-examination and a litany of objections characterized the arms deal inquiry as former President Thabo Mbeki took the stand. The arms deal occurred during his watch as the nation's president. And solidarity with the Palestinians continues to gain traction in South Africa, with another protest march expected in Johannesburg tomorrow. Meanwhile, Israel has indicated 3 nationals for the killing of a Palestinian teenager. Well, let's get straight into the business news of the day. The Reserve Bank raising interest rates by 25 basis points today. Now, that means that the benchmark repo rate at which it lends to banks